Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today is a special day because you have two Coloradans on the podcast. Welcome to the show, Emily. How are you doing?
I'm so good, although I can't say I'm Colorado and in this moment I'm in California.
Oh, you are? Okay,
Yeah,
cool. Well, thank you
I
for talking
am.
to us all the way from over there.
Oh, not too far. Not too far at all. How are you?
I am great. I'm really, really excited for this conversation. Oh my gosh. Before we hit record, we were talking about how maybe our paths have crossed before. And I just thought of something really fun to tell you that I had
What?
totally forgotten about. I think my husband took you whitewater rafting like in 2014, maybe?
Was it with my family?
Yes, because I know he said your mom was there.
Oh my gosh, we have a picture with him. What's his name?
His name's Archie.
Archie. Yes, there's a picture that we love of my
You guys are
mom.
picking him up,
My
right?
2 sisters, yes, and my friend Carly, we're all picking up Archie. We had so much fun. That was in, Buena Vista or
Hmm.
yes. Oh my god, how
Yeah, that's
crazy.
that's how I met him because I rafted for a couple years.
Ah,
And so he was my boss. And then we ended up
crazy.
getting married a couple years later. But I remember soon after I met him, that was in the thick of my CrossFit days when I started raft guiding. And he was like, "You remind me of
Fun.
this woman I took rafting one time." And he was like telling me the story. And I'm like, "I know who that is. That's Emily Schromm." Like, I
Well,
know.
crazy.
I
How
know.
crazy.
Small world.
Tell Archie
But
hi for me.
I will. But before we get into all the fun stuff that you've been up to before and after that, could you just give a very brief intro to who you are and who you serve? And I know that's might be hard with all your businesses, but I'm excited to see how you explain it.
Oh man, yeah, of course. So I am a human being just trying to live life to its fullest. And coincidentally, through that, I have found some problems that I wished to be solved. And so, hence, some business ideas that turned into businesses. But really, it's just a journey that I have been on that is understanding who I am and what I believe in. And I'm so sorry. Is that dog bark really big? Is
It's
that
okay.
loud?
My dogs will bark at some point too,
Are
I'm
you
sure.
sure? I
Yeah.
mean, it might be really bad. I might need to, like, open that little door. Let me know because I could totally let them in. I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
No
I'm
worries.
so sorry. Yeah, so yeah, I just love helping people, and I love helping people find their biggest, brightest selves, and it's been interesting how that has evolved from helping people feel really confident in their body to helping people feel like they have the answers to some of these bigger questions like why am I bloated all the time or why am I burnt out and why do I not feel creative, to even more of the energetics, which is why do I really stay stuck in a cycle that is no longer serving me. I think all of that has to do with wellness. So for me, I just love the deep dive and the shadowy dark side that we have to go on to learn more about ourselves and self-awareness. And from that place, we can really blossom because we're discovering who we are and we get to integrate that into various different things.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like how you've combined so much of the fitness and the wellness. You could let them out. Are they
I'm
good?
so sorry.
No
I'm so
worries.
sorry. I don't know what to do with these
That's what
dogs.
editing is for.
Okay, so my sister has these 2 dogs here, and every time I take them outside, they bark, but then they sit outside when the door's not shut, so I'm not quite sure what to do with them. So we'll try this. We'll try this
Okay.
and see how they do.
No worries.
If we need to, I'll put them in the other room.
Yeah. But yeah, I love how you have this take on wellness that really combines a lot of what my podcast is about, right? Macros, muscle, and manifestation. And your podcast too. I remember when I thought of this podcast name, I was like, yes, I'm going to combine the science and the spiritual of fitness and wellness. And nobody else does that. And then like a month later, I was like, oh, wait, Emily's podcast is Meathead Hippie. Like she was definitely the OG there. But obviously, I'm very passionate about that as well. And your history has a lot of intensity in it, competitiveness, kind of like that type A perfectionist mentality. Even I've heard you talk about how how did that kind of transform into a more spiritual focused, a little bit more balanced kind of from the outside, it looks like?
Well, this is kind of the journey of self, right? We start in such a physical plane. And I think most of us start our journey through physical goals, right? I want to look a different way. I want to feel a different way. I want to fit in certain different things. And so we always start with like a layer of physical, not superficial, but very surface layer. And then we get a little deeper and we realize that, oh, there's more to it. There's about meal timing and there's about digestion and gut health and all of these little layers of the science and the nutrition that happens with micronutrient deficiencies or bioavailability. And so we get a little curious about that. And then we get in a little deeper and it's like, oh, there's actually energetics to the food that I'm eating or to the tea that I'm drinking or to the way that I operate in my day-to-day life. And so I think it's always been about asking more questions, right? You can never have enough answers. There's always more to learn. And when you get curious about things, you just dig a little bit deeper and a little bit deeper. And at some point, you're going to hit the point that is you yourself, your physical body is the limiting factor. You not asking or entering into this other world that is so existent in our life. It's so present because we're not just blobs of cells here for no reason. There is a purpose. There is some bigger, deeper things. There's guidance. There's a reason we're all in this lifetime, in this body, on this earth. We're not just desperate for us to help change people's lives. There's a reason for that. And so when we just keep digging and keep asking and entering into that place of why am I here and what am I here to do in the biggest way possible, or how can I help serve people in the biggest way possible, inevitably you're going to hit the point where you have to learn about your own energy and your own energetics and finding places where I talk about this in my book quite a bit, where we are all so physical, and usually, especially if they're listeners and in that physical space of the meathead, for meathead hippie, or for the micros and muscle and the kind of physical, tangible reason we're here, if we can ask and answer the same question, which is, I'm going to hit a wall at some point. Why? And is that something that I'm willing to open the door for? Am I willing to understand my limiting factor is my own self, my inability to feel ultimately is we're stuck in the do, and at some point we're going to hit creative blocks. We're going to have adrenal burnout. We're going to feel a little bit depleted or a lot of bit depleted. For me, it was a complete and total adrenal burnout that happened and really made me kind of come face to face with my demons of I hated slowing down, and I felt that productivity was the only way to help people. And there was such a limiting resistance to that. There was such a big wall that was like, oh, actually, I can do more help by really healing some of these deeper things in my own self and listening and learning about myself in this deeper energetic way that's not so physical, that will actually be more beneficial for the people around me, because we're so concerned about like expressing our light that we forget that it's just about being more in our joy, being more happy and being more light. And we do that through that deep inner energetic work. And so I don't know if that really answers your question, but I think all of us will inevitably hit it if we haven't yet. And then when we hit it, it's just about really diving in and knowing that it's like the most beautiful journey you can go on, because physical world is such a small part of us. It's just our existence. It's just our to-do list. And that's so 1/10. It's the tip of the iceberg of who we really are.
I think that's a beautiful explanation because I've never really thought of it kind of in those steps that you laid out. But reflecting as you were speaking, like that's exactly what I did. Like it
Mm-hmm.
was all about the macros and all about the nutrition and all about the working out as hard as humanly possible. And then I did have gut and hormone issues come up. And that's really when I felt called to go more to the spiritual side and be like, let me see what else is going on, because it's not just I already knew that taking one supplement wasn't going to like fix all my problems and I could just keep going and going and going.
Mm-hmm.
There were other things that were
Yeah.
deeper.
Yeah.
So it is cool to kind of think of it as like stepping stones almost, that you're going to cross the river at some point and see what else
Mhm.
is over there. Hmm.
Totally, and I love that too because it helps people kind of meet themselves at where they're at, and in a world of comparison and in a world of, "I'm not where I need to be," it's constant FOMO, even more so, I think, in the last year or 2, just this really intense, anxiety and pressure we put on our own selves to perform at a certain way or to perform at a certain level or to just be at a certain place that's really, non-existent. It's just kind of coming back to the idea that this journey is literally so for you and with your own toolkit and with your own guidance instead of always looking for that external support, that guru, right? There's guideposts and there's lighthouses and there's glimmers and there's definitely teachers in the ways that need to be teachers, but we always have the answers. And I think we just aren't really willing to look at that because it's too scary to take that full responsibility, that responsibility of self of, wow, like it is up to me. It is all in me. I have the answers. But that's the place we have to be if we're actually going to make the changes that we want for our own life and where we want to go.
Hmm. Yep. And I think you hit the nail on the head. It can be scary. And it is like counterintuitive. It feels counterintuitive in our instant gratification,
Mhm.
comparison, ego driven society, like you mentioned. So it does take unlearning and relearning, maybe is a good way to think of it,
Mhm.
to really come to that place.
Mm.
Um, what were some things that you did or practices that you are kind of like your go-tos that you've developed over the years to come back to that space,
Mm.
to not continue just pushing, 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 but to really slow down and start asking yourself some of those deeper questions, some of that shadow work, kind of like you mentioned at the
Yeah.
beginning?
Yeah, and it definitely looks different for everyone, but the easiest thing is once you it's like the example of I am gluten-free, dairy-free, and I do that for many reasons, mostly my brain and my skin and my gut. Those are kind of the 3 easiest reasons, right? So I know if I have exposure to gluten, very quickly I know it because my body, either my brain, my gut, or something on my skin will have a reaction. And so I think if we just take that context and translate it to the energetic side of things, there is a symptom to everything we are experiencing. And so at first, it just takes a little bit more awareness, which is I am grabbing my phone, scrolling on social media, and I don't know why. And if I ask myself, well, did something uncomfortable just happen? Or am I avoiding something that's happening? Or am I repressing something? Or I'm feeling something I don't want to feel? I'm going to replace it with something else, right? And hence this kind of trigger. So there's little things that can just start to be your cues like, oh, energetically, I'm not aligned. I can feel that I am resistant in some way. I feel anxiety. I feel stress. I feel not myself. And so that's kind of a broad way of experiencing like an energy that's off. But if you get in a little bit deeper and start listening to that, you can actually start to feel where it is in your body. So some days I'll wake up and I feel like I have a tight turtleneck on my throat, and I'm like, whew, my throat is just like my throat chakra is saying something. It's like it needs to be cleansed. Or sometimes you can just feel like, wow, like I feel really out of balance. I feel really like scattered. I'm not grounded. So then you think about, okay, grounded, rooted. Why don't I feel rooted? Did something happen with my job? Is something happening with my finances? Why might I have that experience? And so for me, the best thing I think is for everyone to really learn about your chakra system, even if it's in such a very brief way of what your chakras, however you want to say it, because it just helps give me a visual when I am looking at where am I holding energy that I shouldn't or where is off. And so every morning I sit and I just start to feel them. And that's sometimes a big jump to just say like just sit and cross-legged and feel your chakras. But you can just energetically understand like, oh, if my throat chakra is like really tight or something's constricted, whether it's good or bad, because I don't think there is good or bad. But if I'm about to jump into a podcast or I'm about to jump into a social media post, I know that that's not going to be my highest expression of self. That's not going to be the best place for me to speak from if it is something that I need to move through. So I really just try to sit and feel all those things and just say, okay, let's go through them. And so in my book, I have some mantras. It's like super simple. It's just like root chakra, I am safe, I am
Mhm.
protected, right? And then we move into our sacral, and I am creative and I am abundant. And you can move into every single one and just start to learn these kind of affirmations, and this cleansing can be really, really helpful. And then as soon as I feel as if I'm reacting instead of responding, then I know I am kind of getting into that lower frequency, which is like not, it's what we all do, right? Which is like quick and short and get things done. It's like that's never how we should operate. It's more about just responding to the life in front of us. So just really recognizing, okay, I'm being quick, I'm being short, I'm being very like kind of, I don't know even know the best way to explain it, because it's not always negative. Sometimes it's a good thing, but it is a much more flow life when we actually understand most of our reactions and the stress that we have is self-created and self-perpetuated. And so it's just like stepping back, slowing down a little bit. And I will say that cutting caffeine has been a big part of that. Because I'm
That's
like, wow, caffeine makes you respond or it makes you react, right? It's like these elements that we have. So I would say a little less caffeine and a little more breathing and meditation.
that's funny you brought that up because I like dabbled in giving up caffeine a few times last year. I would go, like 30 days as for a reset or whatever. And then when I was preparing for my trip to Peru to sit with ayahuasca, it was hardcore no caffeine. And after that, I just don't like want it anymore. Um, I'll do a half calf once in a while and I'm like bouncing off the walls. That's like crazy. When I used to have, in like competitive bodybuilding and CrossFit days, it was like pre-workout caffeinated coffee, energy drink. I'm like, how did I even do that to myself? How did I operate?
I know. Well, I mean, and if you are operating that way, there's no judgment. It's just a recognition of how much room there is to feel a little bit more, because the coffee plant and all her all her glory has such a hold on us as a society. It's really fascinating. Like plant energy is what I am obsessed with, because we know, of course, ayahuasca, and that was actually what got me to cut it as well. It was finally like, okay, if I know that I can make it 3 or 4 weeks without it, that's the worst part. So adding it back in was kind of a no brainer to avoid, because as soon as I dabbled in it, I saw my intensity of my do come out, my masculine, and not the best of the masculine. It was the shadow of the masculine come out in a really strong way in how I was with people and how I was with myself, because who we are with people is a reflection of self and vice versa. So it was just a really wide open, like, okay, I know caffeine is putting me into that space. So it's finding what those triggers are. Is it your social media usage? Is it certain people that you're around? Is it your job? Is it certain conversations that you choose to actively let into your life that put you in those places that are perpetually kind of giving you permission to live in this lower vibration or in the cycle that you know you're trying to move out of? So it's hard, because you just are like, wow, there's so much death. It's like so much death when you're learning about yourself in this way, because you have to let go in order for things to come through. But if you just keep trusting that on the other side of it is something way more beautiful, way more blissful, and ultimately what you are looking for, even if it looks a little bit different, then you just keep surrendering yourself. You just keep jumping off the cliff.
That's a tough one. And that's something I've really been working on over the past year is a lot of death and rebirth. And I think one thing I want to add there is it's okay to sometimes be sad while you're
Mm.
going through these phases of, wow, that really isn't serving me. And it would serve me best to kind of let that go. And it can be in this gentle way. You know, I was talking to a client about releasing control recently, and she's like, but control has helped me so much get to where I am. I'm like, that's
Mm.
beautiful. Then you can kind of say thank you and I'll take it from here versus I hate you and I'm shoving you in this box and don't come out anymore. So there's kind of these different lenses even to look at this growth process through that doesn't have to be one way or another way, or just like you said at the beginning, different strategies are going to work for different people too.
Totally. Yeah, what you said, I actually literally just said that on my last podcast, and it was called on self forgiveness, which is this idea that we have these past versions of ourselves. And I've really revisited it recently with a revisit back to CrossFit after 5 years. I haven't touched CrossFit for 5 years. And it was really interesting because my sister now loves CrossFit. And so I'm visiting her. I'm like, oh my God, am I really going to do this again? And of course, it's just this like watching yourself from above, rethinking all of these memories and moments where we are using control or using self-hatred or using doubt to do, right? There's moments that those, even if they're lower vibrations, they served you in some way, right? And so it's recognizing that is no longer serving us, right? But we have to love it and appreciate it. And we're just so damn hard on ourselves. And I speak for myself too, of the critique that we allow to seep into our everyday. It's really brutal. And I wish if we could do anything, if we just focused on this self-compassion, it would allow that forgiveness of self to really trickle into our current state of being and where we're going. And I'm really just fully focusing on that. Like, okay, where is the forgiveness needed so that I don't cringe when I see photos of myself, or I don't hate myself for who I was in that moment or who I was to other people in that moment, because it is the past. There has to be this recognition of, like, I love who that person is. And I think that's what people struggle with the most, is like, we want to just move on and next and move on and next. And if we are going to do things in a different way, which I feel like is what this whole death rebirth as a society is happening, right? This like, we have to rebuild things. Structures are falling that need to be fallen. What does that mean for ourselves? Like, why are we so ready to move to where we want to go, and we can't do it because we haven't forgiven who we used to be? And it's like a collective thing. Knowing that we're all in that same boat is really wonderful. It doesn't make it easier. It doesn't make it, like less sucky at certain times. But that's what you said is true. It's like, we have to cry. We have to give space to these emotions. We have to feel it all. And letting yourself do that in every space that you can, it makes it move faster. There's times I'm like in my kitchen, I'm like crying. I'm like letting it out because I'm a Cancer moon. And so I'm hyper emotional, and I'm really grateful for it. But it's annoying because I'm like, am I done crying yet? Can I move on yet? It's like, nope, still got more crying to do. So there's just such an interesting way of looking about yourself and where you want to go. But I think right now in this moment before Aries season takes off, it's just like a real recognition of why, where and why are we so mean to ourselves, and how can we like really bundle that up and be proud of every step we have had, good, bad, ugly, so that we can move into this new you or new future with such compassion that didn't exist, collectively, this compassion that's so desperately needed in the world today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because everything, even like you said, the bad parts, the ugly parts,
Mhm.
definitely the good parts, they played a role. They played a role. So acknowledging that instead of turning your back on it, I think is really helpful to actually feel that relief that comes with forgiveness too. And it sounds like you've
Totally.
done so many great practices that have really changed your views of the world and how you see yourself as well. I'm curious how diving more into the energetics of the universe and spirituality, how intertwined was that with changes in your fitness routine or what you were eating or just like other areas of your life and wellness?
Hmm. Well, I think I am always going to learn more, right? So it's always this giant, like Alice in a Wonderland, life on earth. Like I have to appreciate my life in that way. And I love appreciating my life in that way, that it's like this giant rabbit hole and every day is this weird, crazy adventure, right? What's the moon phase today? What's astrology doing today? It's like, what are we going to discover? How can I be bewildered? There's such a great Alan Watts quote of like, or it's a Rumi quote. It's like, exchange your critique for bewilderment or something along the lines of like, how can I just be more in awe of the life that I currently live? Because we know that's tied directly to manifestation. That is our joy, that is our frequency, that's what we hold in order to attract more of that. And so I feel like that's such a great question, but I don't even know quite how to answer it because it's still always unfolding. But for me, it's really recognizing how much is so unnecessary. Like
Mm.
most of the things that we're doing isn't actually all that necessary. And when I really come down to like who I am and what I love to do, it is about what I love to create. And so if we think about nutrition and fitness and the Body Awareness Project or the MPAC or the gym or any of these things that I've been so grateful for to bring to life, that was just a birthing of something that was mine to create and hold. And so it came through me versus just me thinking of it. And so the way I operate is I am a vessel in this lifetime that's like full of abundant creative energy. I love to create things. I love to solve problems. If there is a problem to solve, if there's not a problem to solve, I still think it's vital for us as humans to create. And so, what would that look like if it's just me being open to letting those ideas come through me? So, seeing certain issues or seeing problems that I wish to solve, whether it's herb sourcing or whether it's farming or whether it's regenerative practices, kind of this pivot that I've been making into this world of where our food comes from versus just what we get to eat. I think it's really interesting because it's just about what I'm lucky enough to see and what is my role in this to help create a solution for. And so it's instead of just actively solving problems or instead of actively thinking of, I will help somebody in this way, it's more of just this surrender to, I know and trust that my gifts are going to come through. And I am so excited to see how that happens. I'm so excited to see what comes up or how can I be a part of the solution in this big problem or in this big world that we live in that's full of problems, right? And so I think that changes your operating system from, again, reacting and kind of thinking, how do I solve a problem and kind of staying in this higher, like I would say, yeah, it's fair to say a sympathetic stress response versus something that's more parasympathetic and more trusting of my gifts will come through in the way that they're supposed to. And that just allows you to enjoy the process in a way that isn't so, when this is done, I'll be happy. When this is done, this will be magnificent. It's just this idea that actually the whole thing is just magnificent. And I think that shapes and changes your everyday existence.
Definitely. I like that you brought up a couple like huge pieces there. I think surrender, trust, self belief. And that's kind of another thing I wanted to ask you about because you also listed a couple of the businesses that you own and that you've birthed. I guess my first question is just how have you cultivated such a sense of trust in yourself that because that act of surrender, that act of I know things are going to come through me, that's like deep self-belief and deep trust in yourself. How have you kind of cultivated that over the years and just taken all these leaps to create this wide variety of businesses?
uh, there's always, I love this question that you asked me before, which was about self doubt, and I think recognizing and kind of reframing self doubt as you will always self doubt, or this is my perspective of it, that you will always self doubt if it's something you've never done before, because that's your own internal system making sure things are safe. And so if I reframe it in that way, which is this is a new opportunity in front of me or a new step that I'm taking that I haven't taken before, my system's going to make sure that I see all the issues that could cause danger or could be a red flag. And so self-doubt is non-negotiable. This is just a part of the journey. It just is, because if I have self-doubt, I know it's something I haven't done before. And so it's one thing to say, I have self-doubt because I've never deadlifted 300 pounds before. But then I deadlift 300 pounds and all of a sudden I no longer have self doubt about it. So it dissipates so quickly once the action happens. And so I think in general, if I reframe it in that way and say it's not something so physical like a deadlift, but it's something so, kind of ethereal or like this idea or this vision, it's actually really important because it helps you in the moments that you need it the most to rely on your own internal self. Like there is no external validation that will help you in those moments when you are about to do something new for the first time. And so that's why entrepreneurship, I'm obsessed with it, because it fast tracks your self growth. It fast tracks your relationship with self. It becomes an expedited version of therapy. It's like literally, okay, I see all of it coming up. I feel that doubt. I feel that resistance. My only thing that I focus on is now, what is my reaction to that doubt when it comes up? Do I surrender to the doubt, or do I surrender to divine? Do I surrender to this idea that I'm going to have all these problems, and if I think about all the problems, or am I going to surrender to the idea that I am completely out of control and bravery is rewarded when you just jump? And so I think there is no option. For me, that's just never been, I'm too far in, right? Like every time I'm like, well, it's like two options, two roads. I can be miserable and be overthinking and stuck in self-doubt, or I can just trust it because I haven't died yet. I'm still alive. Like I'm still here. I'm still trying. I'm still efforting. I'm still figuring it out. And so it's kind of a choice of joy. It's a choice of who do you want to be in your day to day? It changes who you are as a partner. It changes who you are as a friend, like being all consumed by this big, scary thing, or being completely enamored with it and obsessed with it because it's like, wow, I can't believe I'm doing this. And you always have to choose the latter, or you would just be miserable. And I think sometimes we choose misery. We choose to be miserable. We choose suffering. And that's the patterns that we need to break and the chains that we need to break. So I don't know how to answer it completely, because I do know there's moments of self-doubt that come, but the faster you recognize it as it's just because it's something new and I'm not going to judge myself for this doubt, the sooner we can move through it. And I also think there's so many cool herbs and flower essences and teas and tinctures that like can really help you shift out of it as fast as you need to, or as fast as you recognize it. And then of course there's like meditation practices in my worst of worst, right? That can really help you get back into alignment and remember how badass you are, right? Because if we remembered how badass we were all the time, we wouldn't have as much kind of cyclical self deprecating talk in our own heads, right? We're like, oh yeah, I am a badass. Oh yeah, I am a superhero. Oh yeah, I can do hard shit. Like those conversations are really important to remind yourself of, just as equally as like, wow, I'm so proud of myself for taking this really terrifying, brave step. And I cry a lot. As I told you, I'm a Cancer moon. I cry all the time, but I just know there's, no option. Like you just have to keep pushing what you believe is possible, because it is possible, because you want it to be possible. Therefore, make that happen. Go create that. But you can't just kind of jump in and then be like, oh, it's not possible anymore. It's like you have to kind of hold that vision. So that's why it's so wonderful why there's people like you sharing this, and people in the world that are guide lights to those darknesses, because that darkness is heavy. It's a lot to hold. But we're not alone, right? We're not alone in these feelings. And it's just remembering like, oh, I'm going to remember how badass I am, and I'm going to get through it.
Yeah, I like that example with the self-doubt always being really present and you just have those two paths to choose from. Cuz I've always thought that with fear, but for some reason I've never translated it into self-doubt cuz fear is also always there anytime you're going to make a decision. But is there also joy and excitement and that feeling of your body just being like, "Ooh, that's really exciting. We should go that way." Because if there's that and there's fear, go that direction. Because there will always be fear when there is a big decision or something. So it's very similar, yeah, to self doubt.
Yeah.
And you brought up herbs, and I definitely wanted to dig into that with you because I know you have. I just joined your, what do you, I think you call it apothecary something,
The Build Your Own
your club.
Apothecary.
Yes. And I just
Yes.
got the lion's mane, which I am a mushroom fanatic. So I was like, this is perfect way to start. But tell us more
Yay.
about like how you've gotten into herbs and teas. And I think you were in Hawaii recently doing stuff with
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my companies I started 4 years ago was Element Tea, and it was all about these medicinal herbs in complement to supplementation. We know micronutrient deficiencies are way too common. So when it came to stress and anxiety, the first blend that I did actually was called herbal coffee because it was a coffee replacement for my adrenals when my adrenals really, really tanked. And so I had this beautiful tea company. I mean, I love it still, obviously, but these blends that I had, I was just kind of like had a light bulb moment of I am a big part of the problem when it comes to supply chain and small businesses that source actually from big corporations who aren't doing practices in the way that are reciprocal and supportive of Mother Earth and the land and how we grow things. And when we look at kind of this vision that we all have of knowing what we're eating and appreciating what we eat and recognizing that what we eat is literally not just one sided, which is on our plate to our body to nourish us, but it's also about how things are grown and making sure that it's in a regenerative cycle. I just stopped the tea company completely and just trusted completely that it would come back when it needed to and how it needed to. And I had no idea what that looked like. And that's kind of the idea that sometimes you just have to trust it, right? Sometimes it takes a couple years, but I went to Maui last year on a one way because I really needed some healing. And Maui is the most healing, one of the most healing places in the world. And had this massive epiphany within the first week meeting all these farmers who wanted to grow herbs and wanting to grow teas and wanting to grow medicinals and really not knowing quite how to. And so it just became an aha moment after aha moment of living in the jungle for 9 months in Maui and just really being open to what it meant for me to be a part of something that was much bigger than just nutrition and fitness, but actually understanding some of these bigger problems that we have, including supply chain and distribution and food scarcity, and just like having my mind blown again and again, and really recognizing like I can bring this back in a way that is supportive and shares the story of the farmers. And so we have a Build Your Own Apothecary, which I'm so glad you're a part of. So you get one herb a month and you learn all about the farm who grew it and also about the medicinals of the plant with some other side things and stories that are just so wonderful to hear and important to hear. You know, even little things like we just added into this last one with lion's mane about bees and honey and
Mhm.
the story of honey, and just trying to bring this appreciation for the food we eat, you know, that there's always two sides to the story. And I think we're curious about that and we know that it exists, but then what's that look like in day-to-day application for us, you know? And it's just really so disconnected. So whatever I can do to help bridge that has been really, really fun. But yeah, I'm surrounded, if you want to see, I'm surrounded by bags and bags of
Oh,
it's just
nice.
so many herbs. So I'm working with a bunch of herbalists and a lot of farmers and just really building a support system for brands like the tea company that I have to be able to change their sourcing. So it's been a brand new company and a brand new project called Peel, but it's been really, really beautiful because it's just so in alignment with how do we take care of ourselves while at the same time taking care of the people who are growing our food and the land that is growing our food as well. So totally the whole idea of self-doubt and kind of jumping into things that you don't know, like it doesn't ever get easier, right? It's all the same. It always is a new obstacle. But if you feel that momentum and you feel that kind of full body that you said, you have to lean into it, because we are here to create solutions for problems that the world has. And I think sometimes we just don't recognize that. We just kind of think we're not significant, or we don't have big answers to things, or we're just living our little life. It's like if all of us knew what we could tap into, we would be way more brave, way more courageous, way more action oriented, because there's so many problems that need to be solved, and they have to be solved by humans that are creative. And so that could look different from every angle, but it's really, really exciting to see kind of people coming out of nowhere and really collaborating in this way to make something like this happen. And just trusting again, like these ideas, even if you have an inkling for it, if you move it and you pursue it, it'll evolve and shape and change into something that's really impactful.
Mhm. I think patience is a huge lesson there,
Yeah.
right? Because I mean, sometimes, especially as I was preparing for this podcast and I was thinking about your businesses, and then I was thinking about Archie rafting with you, and I'm like, oh my God, that was 6, 8 years ago. And you were starting businesses even before that. And in your way back in your real world days, because I was thinking about everything that you have accomplished, especially looking from the outside, but it's been over a long period of time. And you've had a lot of discovery and deaths and rebirths, like we talked about during that time. How have you also, how is patience like woven into all of this? Because I feel like
Mm.
that is the other side of trust and surrendering and coming back to your body, even.
Yeah. Patience has been a hard one. I wrote about the easiest line to remember when I'm impatient is patience is the ultimate sign of immaturity. And my garden taught me that. I mean, that's the thing. If we all just got a little bit more connected to land and nature and gardening and plants and the moon cycle, and in general, these things that are around us that hold us, it's nature, we tend to learn the lessons from it, right? So we know that if I'm like staring at this plant, I had a money tree, and I'm like, grow faster. Like, what is wrong with you? Come on. And I'm like, my God, I'm such a silly little human right now, yelling at this tree that's been around for millions of years to grow faster. And it just was this immediate instinct of like, yeah, impatience is my sign of immaturity. I know that I am being this like tantrum toddler when I'm like, make things go faster. I must go faster. It's like, that's not how the world works. And we know that when we look at even the female cycle, right? Our female cycle is so cyclical. It's like we have to give ourselves rest because we're shedding. Like there's this really beautiful recognition when we don't see our menstrual cycle, if you have one, as something to be a pain in the ass. It's actually really sacred. It's really beautiful. So when we have those recognitions, it's like, oh, okay, just like the moon, we're just going in these cycles, and we check progress, 6 months in a year. But when we're doing it day to day, it feels like we're just staring at nothing. It feels like we're not moving anywhere. And that's just, again, this like immature perspective. If we can really be more of this bird, which is why I created this bird quiz, I want people to see things from a perspective that isn't so physical. It's not so, I can only see my progress and it's this much. I suck. It's like, no, this is like the big picture. See where you're going and trust that you're going to get there.
I did do your bird quiz recently.
What
It
are
was so
you?
fun. Deer.
Oh, you're such a dear. I was going to guess if you didn't take it.
Which is funny, in Peru, before one of our ceremonies, someone else had brought an oracle deck, and the card I drew was a deer
I
card.
love it because
And I was like, oh
I pulled elk this morning, which I love
my
because
God. Ah.
that's so resonant, because it's deer is great because of elk and deer energy. It can be masculine or feminine, although sometimes it's a little bit, more associated with this feminine soft mother. It can also be very fatherly and very supportive, and it's just deers are so needed. It's crazy how your energy is really grounded, it's solid, it's boundaried, it's also really safe for people to connect with you. You create such a container for people to connect with you in that way. And that makes total sense that you're a deer.
Oh, I love it. I'm so glad. I didn't realize, I guess I didn't really pick up on kind of the feminine side, but that everyone listening is probably rolling their eyes because that's been like my mantra over the last year is coming back to my feminine because I have a very similar competitive, like doer history as you. So that's really nice to hear. And I
Mhm.
also love that you mentioned about the cycles because knowing that progress is cyclical and not linear, like, oh my God, that is just can be such a weight off your shoulders, no
Mhm.
matter what kind of goal you're going for. If you do have a physique goal or a fitness goal or a career goal, knowing that ebbs and flows are to be expected is so helpful, especially now I work with a lot of women moving away from macros and coming back to that intuition, to their hunger and fullness cues.
Mhm.
And there are always times when it's like, oh, but I feel a little bit heavier this week, or I think I'm more bloated this week, or, something's not quite where you want it to be, but you're learning. Like
Yeah.
your intuition is not just this like billboard posted for you every day telling you exactly what to do, right? The whole point is that you're allowing some of that flow of energy to come through you, kind of like you
Mhm.
said previously, too.
Yes, and it's the layers of what you're going to allow yourself to feel. And that kind of comes back to like we have a physical cue that our shoulder hurts, we need some lat mobility, or we have a physical cue that our knee hurts, we need some fish oil. But like we get deeper and deeper into it, and I think there's always like this big wall, right? It's like, oh, I've hit my point. Like I'm not going to feel that anymore, you know? And so when you know that those cues that you just said are the intuition, it's easier to say, okay, I'm willing to open this door. I'm willing to see what's on the other side of this, or I'm willing to feel this thing that feels so scary, or address this thing that feels so scary, because once it's addressed, it actually dissipates. It has no power. So yeah, you're speaking right to what is needed the most.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I could talk to you all day and pick your brain about business questions, but I'll let you go here pretty soon. But one thing I did want to ask is what what other projects have been floating around in your mind that you've been playing with? Like are there things you can share about a new workout bag or another gym or something crazy?
Of course, yeah. Well, always feel free to ask away. I am such an open book. And it's funny, the moon is like so, it's in between phases in this very moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yes.
very void, of course. And it's so fun because it's like such a time to do conversations like this. So it's really quite nice to reflect in this conversation. So I appreciate it so much because I don't do that enough. I don't celebrate or reflect. I mean, we could do it a lot more than we do, all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But I appreciate you bringing that out today. I am really, really excited about peel, which is this idea that we have to get curious about where things are sourced from. And I want to provide farmers distribution channels. And it's been so beautiful to work with these farmers and help them really understand that they can, grow and go where they need to go and where they want to go through brands that are able to communicate that to their consumer. So that's a big way of saying, I can't wait to help the world source better because I was part of the problem, right? And everything that I've done, it's really beautiful and I'm grateful for it, whether it's launching the MPAC or the tea. But did I recognize the other side of some of these problems, which were supply chain and how things were grown and freight and shipping and, changing routes? It's like the environment is suffering because of some of these things. And I really am excited to really bring back some support for not just my brand, my tea company, but other brands that are looking to change their sourcing and have that direct connection to earth. So that's been really, really fun and exciting and new. And then this bird quiz, it's just been like the most fun thing to put together and help communicate to people. Because I do believe like meditation's a much bigger topic, but all of us receive things differently, and if we're looking at how do we help with ourselves grounding in, or how do we help with ourselves not falling off the cliff, or how do we find that kind of internal self, it's really fun to notice, belugas aren't going to think their way through anything. Like they need to feel, they need to really move through things, through sound healing, through sound baths. And rattlesnakes need to breathe through it because they're already so in their head. And deers are really important. It's so important for you. Like if you're out of balance, moving into that sound healing. So it's just really cool to like experiment with that and help people have tangible tools with healing, in a way that is not so massive and like, what is healing? What might it look like? But yeah, lots of death is happening in order for lots of rebirth. And I think all of us relate to that, right? It's like, I don't know exactly what it looks like, but I never do. And I just got to keep trusting that the universe has my back. And I always come back to, is your heart in the right place? Are you doing this for the better of people? And is it something that you love? And when those all line up, you really can't go wrong. You just got to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm. Ah, that is so, so beautiful. And I know we talked about a lot today, quite a wide range of topics. So if anyone's listening and you feel like this was too much, or I my mind is blown, please, just a gentle reminder to take whatever did stick out to you. If there was one little thing that Emily said that you were like, oh my gosh, that really resonates, just take that and let go of the rest. Kind of like we were talking about at the beginning with the stepping stones. Whatever stepping stone you're on, that is the perfect one for you to be on. So just hang out there, just enjoy it.
I love that. Yeah. Just let your feet be happy with where they're at and not so worried about where they're going.
Yes. Wise words. Thank you again so much for your time and your knowledge and your diverse skill set. Where can people find you, learn more? If you want to list out your companies, go for it. I lost count.
Me too, Caroline. Me too. No, I think the easiest is so emilyschromm.com is somewhat of a hub of everything where you can kind of dig into what I've done. And I restarted a blog, which has been really fun. Meathead Hippie podcast, if they're podcasters. Kind of wide range of topics. I'm sure yours are as well, just really trying to hit on all the different forms of medicine. I really love the bird quiz. So take the bird quiz and you're going to learn a lot about what I believe in when you go through the results of like, oh, here's some ways that I can integrate some self-healing and practices that are a little bit more tangible. And yeah, I think outside of that, I have all my things are www.platformdaily.com has finally become the place where all the things I've created live. But you can find it on emilyschromm.com and my Instagram, Emily Schromm.
Perfect. Everyone go check out those resources. Tons of beautiful things to get involved in, honestly. I love everything you create. I think you can really see your passion behind it. So thank you for being such a creator. And thank you for listening. If you liked this episode, please share it to Instagram and tag us. I love to see what you guys are enjoying so we can do more of it. And we will talk to you next week. Bye-bye.